The Simone Feiler Podcast, giving authors a platform. Welcome to the podcast.
This is definitely one for the ladies who want to consolidate goals and find a roadmap on how to achieve them. Amanda Blesing is the person to work with if you want to shine. I've spent the better part of 10 hours working with Amanda, who's just finished narrating her inspiring and empowering audiobook From Invisible to Invincible. And I can tell you, I have learned so much about myself, about being a woman who's worked mainly in a man's domain, about how to start owning who I am and what I do. And I'd like to say thank you so much, Amanda, and welcome to the Simone Feiler Podcast.
Hi, Simone. Lovely to be here, and it's been fabulous to work with you. And I'm really, really pleased to hear that you learned something.
Yeah, some things. Yeah, I've really enjoyed your book. We're going to chat about your book, Invisible to Invincible, very shortly. But first, I'm keen to find out a little bit about you, Amanda, because you're intriguing, you're savvy, you're inspiring, and I feel so privileged that you've chosen me to make your audiobook with, so thank you. You grew up on a farm in South Australia, so tell me how life was for you back then on your farm.
Yeah, I did grow up on a farm in South Australia, and as an adult, I look back on it and it was an amazing upbringing. At the time, I'm not sure if I felt that, certainly not as a teenager. I couldn't wait to get out and go to the city, but I grew up on a farm and it was amazing. But I think that instilled a degree of resilience and creativity. We weren't bound by the same stereotypes as some of our city or town friends were, and we got to be more adventurous and do wild and crazy, wacky things like learning to ride motorbikes at a young age and, shifting sheep down little country roads for kilometres on our own. You wouldn't do that now. Parents would be arrested. But we did all amazing things.
You were the drovers.
Yeah, we were the drovers, like the sheepdogs. And, I think it helped us helped me be a little more creative and definitely resilient and with a growth mindset.
What a wonderful start, fresh country air and all outdoor living back in the day. Amazing. Well, what about moving on? Because maybe it was Olivia Newton-John's song Physical that inspired you in the 80s, but whatever it was, I'm keen to find out how you became the state aerobics champion of South Australia.
Too funny. And for years I hid that. And I remember I had just applied for a role of CEO. I'd landed the role of CEO in a non-profit in Melbourne. And one of my board members came up to me at a function and said, I've just done my research and I Googled you and I can see photos of you as a state aerobics champion and doing aerobics and doing high kicks. And I was really embarrassed. I didn't realise those photos were still online. But that was a really important part of my career. I had a degree in education. I had postgrad qualifications in dance, and I stepped into the fitness industry because the money fell out of the arts industry. So I went, I'm going to go into the fitness industry where I can put my passion for educating others to good use, but in the physical capacity of fitness, being physical and moving, that floats my boat. So it worked out really well. It was a great segue, as an industry segue, taking transferable skills and working out how I might build a career pathway that wasn't in the arts.
So you've been working with women basically since you left the farm, by the sounds of things.
Yeah, actually that's true, because let's face it, it's mainly women who are, in doing aerobics classes and step classes and things like that. So yes, we did have mixed gender audiences there, but yes, predominantly women.
Very cool. Obviously, fitness has been a very big part of your life. If you were doing aerobics back then, you told me that you're still doing yoga, and you actually climbed the Story Bridge yesterday here in Brisbane. How was that for you?
Oh, look, I loved it. It was really fun. I was, quite obviously the oldest person on our tour group. Lots of youngies. The woman I was chatting with the most, she was just in her first year of university studying nursing. So it was really fun to learn about her career and her vision for herself. And she didn't know anything about me or what I was doing. So it was really fun to be a little bit anonymous like that and just talk with someone who was so enthusiastic about her career as we we climbed the Story Bridge together. We had a female guide, and she told us all the history of the bridge and kept us a little sidetracked so I didn't focus on my fear of heights. It was really fun. It was a good thing to do, and it's part of at the moment, I'm trying to make sure I put novelty and adventure in my life again after a few years of being locked up during the pandemic. I'm trying to make sure I get a little bit of adventure back into my life and do different things. I've got interesting things to talk about at dinner parties.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you do. And even, you live in Melbourne, coming up here to record with me in Brisbane. That's already, putting yourself out there, out of your comfort zone, and then even further climbing the bridge in the city.
It gave me a sense of accountability, though. I think that I might have easily found a way to cancel or postpone if I was just to do it in Melbourne. Whereas knowing I'd booked my airfares, I'd booked my accommodation, I would lose a lot of money if I cancelled or postponed, because recording an audiobook is me taking my journey to the next level. It's my self-promotion push. I want to get my book into the hands of more women. I want to help change the world for a better place for us all. And to do that, I need to keep putting myself out there, even if it makes my voice shake, even if I'm uncomfortable. So me committing to it and putting some accountability and rigor around it, so I had a system in place, so I had to come or lose a lot of money, it actually made it, and making it interesting too. So I was looking forward to the warmth of Brisbane. So that was just me putting a system around it to make it more like I couldn't get out of it.
That is empowering in itself. Yeah, putting yourself right out there and making it very hard to say, no, I'm not doing this. Good for you. You managed a gym in Sydney once you moved from Adelaide back in the day. So how did you get into this? Was that after winning your aerobics?
Yeah. So in my book, I tell a little story about, using networking for your career advantage and, win promotions, pay rises, better opportunities or new roles. And in actual fact, there's been 2 instances in my career where I've attended a networking event with decision makers, and that's eventuated into a new role. And the shifting to Sydney from Adelaide, shifting to Sydney and to work in a gym, manage the aerobic schedule, and then a stint as gym manager, that was because I was at a function. I was at lunch with some decision makers at the Peak Body Awards, something or other for fitness instructors and gym owners, and I was in the right place at the right time, and I put myself out there, and I at that lunch said, well, if anyone's got any job opportunities come up, I would love to hear. And as a result of that, I landed an interview and was able to move to Sydney. That was great. And I really encourage my listeners, anyone listening to this, going to networking functions. You might hate it, but go to functions where decision makers go, because it's those conversations where you connect, you learn, you find relatable topics of common interest, and that's how you find great maybe partnerships or opportunities that can help your career and help them.
Yeah, so definitely worth going to networking. But you do dedicate some sections in your book about networking and how you don't have to go to every single networking event, or an opening of an envelope, as you put in your book. Just pick the important ones that really resonate with you. Was that function that you went to, was it because you won the state awards? You were invited there?
Yeah, that's right. Because I'd won the state championships, we got to go and compete at a national level. Really interesting story behind that one, though. We were flown to the Gold Coast for the major event, and it was right at the time of the airline industry strike. Do you remember that? It was some years back. It would have been maybe 89, I think. And the airline industry, there were strikes, and the Australian government flew us there. I flew in a Herc.
Wow.
So me and my there was mixed pairs, and me and my pair, and other competitors from South Australia, we were in a Herc. The Defence Force flew us to the Gold Coast because that was the only way to get around the country at the time.
Wow.
It was a really interesting time to fly, but boy, it taught us a lesson or two. It was very uncomfortable. And you didn't want to go to the toilet. That's all I can say. It was a bucket in a corner behind a curtain. Do not go to the toilet.
In a Herc.
Yeah.
That's a very cool story.
Yeah, I haven't got that in the book, but yeah,
there's one to write about.
Yeah, that's right. It's about take advantage of opportunities that come your way.
That's it. Well, if that's not inspiring, and clearly a full plate for you already, you went back to uni and then you completed your Bachelor of Education. Is that right, around that time?
Yeah, that's right. I went back to uni. I'd been managing a gym and then I ended up going back to university because I sort of decided I was a little tired of picking up after everyone else.
At the gym.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And, when you are managing a gym, there's a lot of that goes on. Yeah. And I also wanted to get my brain going again. And I had a diploma of education and I decided to turn that into a degree. It was once again a nice segue. And that then, after I finished that, I went off to Wollongong University. And after I finished that, then I decided I would create that nice segue. I'm really big on segues. I love that, finding commonalities between where you are now and where you want to get to. And so I went, well, if I go and work for the peak fitness industry body and apply my education knowledge, that might be a really good way for me to progress my career. And that's what I did. I went and worked for the peak fitness industry body. And that began the next phase of my career in the peak body sector. Where I, help professionals be more professional, designing and developing educational training programs, conferencing, producing magazines, running awards programs, CPD programs. It was all about helping professionals become more professional and succeed in their career. So that I basically was doing that since the early 90s.
Right. Okay. Then you went on to work as CEO of SOCAP for 6 years. You came to the ultimate realisation that women seem to hide behind a bushel, almost all of us, not putting their hand up in the boardroom, not owning their capabilities and awesomeness, not telling the people that actually mattered what they'd achieved and what they can do. How did you come to this realisation? Was it through yourself? Clearly not, because you were stepping up and moving on. But how did you realise that, come on, women, stand up?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is that SOCAP is the Society for Consumer Affairs Professionals. It's a bit of a mouthful, that's why it's shortened to SOCAP. And in consumer affairs, there's a lot of really smart and talented women who are doing great things. To be honest, if you've got a problem with a bank, you want one of these women to be on your side. They're amazing. They're great at negotiation. They're great at finding win-win solutions. They're phenomenal and they're really skilled and also super smart. They know how to navigate the complex corridors of power when it comes to helping other people. But that was the thing. They were great at doing that when it comes to helping other people. But when it came to doing it for themselves, they weren't so good. So I would call for papers and 10 men would put their hand up and say, hey, pick me. I've got this whisper of an idea. Oh, let me run it by you. Oh, and send me some sort of half a paragraph that may or may not have been well written and it may or may not have been a good idea, but they were prepared to put themselves out there and consider the possibility that this might be a good idea. And only one woman. And typically she would be a lawyer who was doing it for business development purposes. She'd been told she had to do it by, her boss. And so she was doing it for a specific task. Whereas the other talented women in the membership, and it was predominantly women, weren't doing or didn't feel they were worthy enough or their ideas were good enough. And I'd call for award nominations and the women were all running around busy nominating their junior staff, which was the right thing to do. But then they'd forget or perhaps run out of time, run out of puff, code for imposter syndrome, and then they wouldn't write their own nomination. And what they didn't know was that the men weren't writing their own nominations. They were getting the communication team at the organisation to help them write theirs or even outsourcing. Wow. And so it was just this moment of realisation where I thought to myself, actually, I want to find something I'm purposeful and passionate about. I can see there's a gap here. These smart and talented women, they would really benefit from someone holding their hand, pointing them in the right direction, shining a mirror, holding them accountable and helping them navigate to the next level to get paid more, to get more recognition and, progress their career into bigger, better, more impactful roles. And I just went, that's a gap. That's something I can fill. I love working with fixer women. That's what one of the brands from the book or one of the ideas from the book. Yeah. I love working with fixer women and enabler women. I really love it. I love helping them navigate a pathway to the top. It's so rewarding, so fulfilling. I can see myself doing it for another decade.
Well, I think you're a G just by seeing that gap in the market, because you've obviously helped a number of women just improve their production, improve their future, their outlook, their self-belief, so many things. And anyone that reads Invisible to Invincible will get the same, because that's how I felt. It's incredibly empowering.
I also got them to improve their what goes into their back pocket. No more leaving money on the table anymore. While the book isn't about negotiation, it sure helps you position yourself for a pay rise or a new role with a bigger salary, and that's a good thing. If you don't value yourself, others won't either.
Yeah, for sure. You were actually telling me about one of the ladies that you worked with that tripled, almost quadrupled her pay, but didn't even realise until she kind of had a conversation with you and you said, hey, this is what you could do better. And now she's like,
yeah. Yeah, there's so much that goes into it too. It was not one move, and I write about that on my blog.
Yeah.
It wasn't one move. It was a series of realisations of doing the deep work, of feeling the self-worth work, the confidence building, the understanding and valuing what you do and putting a value on it and practicing doing that on a regular basis. There were a couple of sneaky and, bold, fearless career moves. It was a whole package. So it didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It happens over time, but it could happen for you.
Yeah, that's right. It's baby steps towards it, as long as you're working towards it and realising it in the first instance. So is this kind of what led you to starting your own business?
Yeah. So that moment when I realised, 10 men put their hands up and only one woman, that was in actual fact a really big defining moment for me. It was an actual instance. I'd called for papers for a conference, and that's actually what happened, and I was blown away, and it was just at that point where I was wondering about what next. So that was almost a decade ago. Yeah. I think we're, 1 year off a decade. It'll be a decade in 2024.
Congratulations.
Amazing. Who knew? But it's been a really rewarding decade. I tend to have a little bit of a career crisis every 7 years. Well, this one's missed me. I haven't had a career crisis in 7 years because I love my job so much.
Oh, isn't that fantastic? Well, congratulations. Obviously rewarding for yourself, but also rewarding the people that you work with, which is ultimately very satisfying. I know, doing my job, so. But along with all that, and obviously running your own business now, you're also a public and keynote speaker. You featured in The Age, ABC, Sky News and The Daily 10, among others. You've won awards, including the LinkedIn Top Voice. You're the author of 2 books, Step Up, Speak Out, Take Charge, and now you're super empowering Invisible to Invincible. I did tell you guys this lady is an Aussie icon. She really is. Amanda, you are the bomb. Your book, Invisible to Invincible, resonated with me right from the get-go when you talked about women moving up in the workplace as compared with men moving up in the workplace, yeah? I remembered while you were reading it out early in my career working in radio, if another girl got a better shift or got a promotion where I didn't, I took that personally, and I was like, oh, I'm really not that good. But if one of the guys got the better shift or got a promotion, I was like, good on them. Or it really didn't affect me the way it did if a woman came up. But that really brought it home to me. I felt somehow disempowered by another woman moving up the ladder instead of being their cheerleader, which I should have been, of course. And furthermore, I thought that I was the only selfish one having these thoughts back in the day, but evidently not after listening to Invisible to Invincible. Do you believe that we are moving on from that?
I would like to think so, because it makes you feel a bit icky about yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So let's just step back a little bit. So what can happen is, because there are so few roles that are for women in masculine-dominated environments, sometimes there'll be. I had one client, there were 3 women in her department out of 100, 3 women.
Wow.
And the manager stood up at a meeting and said, we've got enough women. 3 out of 100. But that makes the competition feel really fierce, and that encourages that women competing against each other sort of notion. And let's face it, the media beat that up too. You know, during the lockdowns, they pitted the New South Wales Premier against the Queensland Premier, and it was like catfights. The media beat that up, and women competing against other women. But we can feel threatened by another woman. I really encourage, if you do feel threatened by another woman and like there's only one role available for us to compete against, you know, we're not really competing against the men, we're competing against the women. Examine that, have a look at that. We should be throwing back the net. We should be cheering other women on. And we shouldn't just be competing for the roles that are available for women. We should be competing for all the roles.
Yeah.
All the roles are available for you to compete for, not just the one that a woman holds. So, let's take an abundance mindset to the opportunities that are available for us. Yes, it might be tougher because you're a woman, but let's put some strategies around that, some tactics, which I help my clients with, and let's get you in the running for all the roles, not just the ones set for women.
Yeah, that's liberating. Very cool. There's a lot of great info and examples of how women keep their capabilities, their experience, their achievements, and so much more a secret in Invisible to Invincible. But ultimately, your goal, from my understanding after hearing your book, is to assist women with exposing this information with #self-promotion. It's really a step-by-step guide to becoming brave and bold enough to feel comfortable, and more so feeling deserving of putting yourself in the spotlight. So in your coaching experience, though, how have women encapsulated this concept?
So stepping into the limelight is not necessarily an easy thing, let's face it. For years, women have been socialised to be the 2IC. You know, behind every great man, there's a good woman. And there's lots of empowering memes right now about women stepping up and women stepping out and being more visible. And, you know, we cannot be who we cannot see. So it's great to see so many wonderful female role models now. But it's hard when you are used to hiding behind your husband's achievements or your partner's achievements or your kids' achievements, and you're encouraged to do that. You're encouraged. The penalty for a woman who takes credit for other people's work is far greater than the penalty for a man who does that. So we've got to really navigate a knife edge. You know, we're damned when we do self-promote, yet we're doomed when we don't. Self-promotion isn't about taking credit for other people's work. I want to be really clear there. But we need to find a way of talking about the things we did do without taking credit for others' work. We have to own our part. As I like to remind my clients, own your own awesome. Hashtag own your own awesome. Because when we can own the part we played, guiding, shaping, empowering, leading, setting up guide rails, whatever it is, when we can own the part we did, then and truly value that, maybe quantify it, that's the secret, quantify the value on a regular basis so you begin to understand the value. When we can do that, it makes it easier to step into the limelight, because all of a sudden you go, actually, I am the bomb.
Yeah, when you can see it.
I am the goods. I've got these goods. My results are better than other people's. I should be here. I'm going to step up here and own this.
That's very, very awesome. Like, listen to Amanda. How empowering is she? I'm fangirling just quietly. You outline a number of ways women can step out from behind their bushel. And thank you, because I really feel like I've been empowered by the listen. There's some great stuff in the book, and now the audiobook, about picking a platform or a cause that you believe in and making it more about those than yourself, or the aspect of helping other people. If you're shy in particular, focus on other aspects of what you do rather than yourself. Why do you think this road is successful when it comes to self-promotion?
Now, there's an interesting conundrum when it comes to self-promotion, especially if you're struggling with dealing with the modesty norm, or you're naturally humble, or maybe an introvert. And my bit of advice is take the self out of self-promotion. So what does it mean? So it means that we focus on the difference we're making, focus on the problems we are solving, focus on how you are helping or how this solution helps others. So, for example, one of my clients, she's super good at this. She's a young Filipino professional living here in Australia now. She's just done the citizenship ceremony and she works in finance. And every time she posts on LinkedIn, she might talk about her achievement, and then we'll talk about the 3 learnings that she gleaned during the process that might be helpful to others. So, for example, she just posted about becoming an Australian citizen and included 3 bullet points that might help others about stepping up and becoming an Australian citizen and what it means. So when we focus on how we might help others in a similar situation, it makes it far easier. And research backs this up. I've got a really... Do you want to hear a story about how I started to learn this?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, so some years ago, I was doing the CEO Sleep Out. And so that's where it's a fundraiser. I can't remember the name of the charity who does it, but it's raising money for homelessness. And in particular, I focused on raising money for homeless women. That became my platform, so to speak. And let me tell you, it's pretty uncomfortable. You sleep on cardboard boxes in the MCG or somewhere around Melbourne, and I think they do it on a national level.
And do that? Yeah, they do. I remember them doing it here in Brisbane. It's during winter as well, isn't it? It's usually
around the 23rd, the equinox or whatever you call it, the solstice. It's really quite cold and uncomfortable. And anyway, I've done it a couple of times. And the second time I did it, I really noticed that when it comes to putting myself out there and asking people to consider me as a speaker or a trainer or a coach, I'm just as hesitant and reticent as everybody. I have the same self-doubts. I have the same worries. I don't want to big note myself. I don't want to come across as though I'm too big for my boots and blowing my own horn too much. Well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to breach the stereotype norm for women in case I get it wrong, because the backlash or potential for backlash can be severe. But I noticed when I was fundraising, I was outrageous. And I'm rolling my eyes, I'm being really dramatic here. I was truly outrageous in my fundraising efforts. I was like hitting people up, like over and over again. I was emailing them, I was ringing them, I was texting them, I was posting ridiculous amounts of time on social media. I was outrageous in my approach, and I've done it a few times now, and I know just give myself a week to be outrageous, and then I go back to the norm. And it got me really curious. The last time I did it, I raised $11,000 in a week, which was pretty significant. And I think what I want to do in future is get a team together of all my clients, and we all do it as a team. And I'll teach them my techniques, my outrageous, shameless self-promotion techniques. But what it did, it sparked me. I came back from that and went, oh my gosh, I just raised $11,000 in a week by being outrageous. And I was outrageous. I was totally shameless. What is that? So I started Googling, and that's when I found out that it's easier to get out of our own way, depress the modesty norm, when we do it for a cause, for something bigger than us, for something we believe in, something that helps you depress the modesty norm. And it was such a moment that's why I include it multiple times. I reference it in the book, How to Depress the Modesty Norm.
You must have been incredibly inspired by doing that to rate. That's a lot of money for one lady in 1 week. That's excellent. That was just before COVID that they were doing that, I think.
Yeah, I think they had them throughout COVID, although it was a bit harder. They had a car boot one and a veranda one.
Right. Okay. Do it from home.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll have a look and see if I can find a link to see if they're still doing it and put it up on our podcast if anyone's interested. One of the standout chapters of how to make a great start with self-promotion, apart from all the other very informative content in your book, is about taking it to LinkedIn, which you've actually won the Top Voice Award for. How did you first find out about LinkedIn? How did you get involved in it? And when did you realise, this is the tool?
Well, I am an early adopter. I had a coach back in the early 2000s, and she said, oh, have you considered LinkedIn? And I set up a profile back in 2004 or something like that, and I never looked at it. Truly, I just set up a daggy profile. I did the basics and didn't really look at it until probably 6 years later. And, to be honest, I was lousy at it. There I was working in the association sector, as I mentioned before, the peak body sector. And all I would do is just stick a post up advertising the event that our organisation was hosting, or the award ceremony. It was, I just linked it. I was hiding behind the organisation.
Right.
And then I decided when I was going to set up my business, I went, this is going to be important to my career. This is where a lot of professionals hang out. If I can learn a lot here, that will help. And let's be honest, the first 6 months of me going out were really tough. You know, it was really hard to get going. And
Is
then,
that self-promoting?
yeah, get going and running the business the first 6 months. So then what I did was I actually interviewed 3 people who were going gangbusters on LinkedIn. And that was a turning point for me. I started learning all sorts of different tactics and seeing it as a strategic brand building tool for what it is. I interviewed these 3. They were men, and I just sort of learned all the tactics that they were using and then worked out what worked for me. And that was the beginning of my journey. That probably happened in 2015. It really helped me move the dial on LinkedIn. And since then, I've been using it consistently ever since.
Yeah, you've got a lot of followers, and obviously it's helped you in being good at self-promotion, I guess.
It's given me lots of practice and how to self-promote without sounding like you're self-promoting.
Yeah. I know you've got to catch a plane soon. I'd love to chat all day. But one last question. Throughout the book, you mention it quite a few times, you can't sell a secret. Tell the ladies listening about this, a small little insight into what they can expect to hear from your audiobook.
Right. Yes, you cannot sell a secret. I think it's an old real estate expression. It's hard to sell a house that's hidden, but it's the same for us. If you are a best kept secret, how will anyone buy you, promote you, give you a pay rise? It's not enough to expect your results to speak for themselves. They don't. Results don't speak. And yet it's a really common mental script we all have.
That's such an important thing.
And in a busy, crowded marketplace with younger, upcoming, good self-promoters who are really good at self-promotion
Getting
tactics.
better by the minute.
Yeah. They leverage social media like you wouldn't believe, and they're very good at brand building, as part of the young person's education these days, and copywriting and brand building and etc. But we need to learn from them and adopt those tactics. If you want to make a really big difference in your industry, in your career, or to a constituent base or a client base or customers, then they can't find you if you are hidden. So you need to step out from behind whatever it is you're hiding behind. Maybe that's your website, maybe it's your company name, whatever it is. And you need to step out from behind that so that people can find you, connect with you, learn to build rapport with you, build some trust, and then hopefully buy from you or promote you and give you a pay rise.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm certainly thinking I've got to do some work on my LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram accounts and step out from building audiobooks, maybe. Okay, I know I said one more question, but two, how did you find your experience recording your audiobook with me?
Oh, look, Simone, I loved it. I was really nervous. There I was flying from another city up to Brisbane. Okay, I did it for a reason. Warmer weather was one of them.
And it's turned it on for you.
And it has. It's 28 degrees today. And I was really a little bit nervous. And then I got here. Simone was very welcoming. She even introduced me to her kids. And, she made the experience really, really easy. You made the experience really, really easy.
Thank you.
Your professionalism, and, it was obvious right from the get-go that you knew what you were talking about with the recording, the sound, the setup, the feedback to me, making me feel comfortable with the microphone, or helping me feel comfortable and giving me ideas on how to stand and sit and do, not pop the peas and yeah.
And you're good at that now.
And never once did you come across as frustrated. Even there was one day where my error rate was much higher, and never once did you come across as frustrated. It was a very easy experience.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you very much. I'm going to use that as a grab. Promote myself.
Excellent.
All right. And the other question is, where can people find you besides LinkedIn? Obviously, you're there in a big way.
Yep. So I've got a website, www.amandablesing.com, and that's Blesing with one S, a blessing in disguise. And
Yeah.
yes, you can crack that joke. That's fine. You can find me. I'm on Instagram and I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the big one where people really find me. I've got some post-nominals after my name, FARPI. I'm a fellow of the Australian Risk Policy Institute. And so, yeah, connect with me if you are listening to this podcast, because on LinkedIn, I have my profile locked down a little bit, so it's actually hard to connect with me. But if you are listening to this podcast, I give you permission to work around the follow me button. You know, I want you to puzzle this out. Work around the follow me button. Find the connect me option. You've got to click on the 3 little dots and then a drop down menu appears. Find the connect with Amanda and then actually connect with a message. Say, I heard you on the Melbourne Audiobooks or Simone's podcast and I really liked your lessons on self-promotion. I'd like to connect with you. Send me that note so I know how you found me and I will connect with you.
Yeah, and it will definitely be worth your while. I'm telling you, I've learned so much. I feel very blessed that you have come up from Melbourne to record your book with me because, yeah, I love you. Empowering women globally. You are the bomb, Amanda Blesing.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining the Simone Feiler Podcast. What's your story? Contact Simone for a chat at brisbaneaudiobookproduction.com.